Hello, sports fans. Today we will be reviewing Week 18 and a look on what Week 18 had on potential playoff seedings and eliminations. So, our first game was Saturday, Chiefs versus Broncos. Broncos almost put up the upset 28 to 24. Patrick Mahomes 27 for 44, 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon I think got back the starting role from Javonte Williams, has been having a really good season, but he had a very good volume, 12 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown for him. The last Saturday game was Cowboys versus Eagles. Cowboys 51 to 26. Now, don't get the score twisted or anything. The Eagles ran it most of the game, and they had all their backups in. So this kind of scares me for Dallas a little bit. Even though Dak Prescott had 21 for 27, 295 yards, and 5 touchdowns. It was like a one possession game for most of the first half. Moving on to our Sunday games. Bengals versus Browns. Browns pull up the upset here, lowering the Bengals' playoff seed a little bit. This could potentially give them a worse playoff matchup. Case Keenum was the starting quarterback for Cleveland Browns, which makes it more surprising. He went 17 for 24, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And their running back, 25 carries, 123 yards, and a touchdown. So a really dominant game on the ground, which I do believe their defense is the Bengals' weak spot. Next game, Packers-Lions. Most people think this was an upset, but that was incorrect. It is an upset, but the Packers had their bench in for the second half, and they were winning in the first half, so keep those starters healthy. But Lions, they do not get the first overall pick. We'll talk about that later, but they kind of sold the bad. It would kind of done them better if they lose, because now I think they're not going to be able to get Aiden Hutchinson, which I think is the most definite number 1 overall pick in the draft. Next game is Bears-Vikings. Vikings 31, Bears 17. Not a surprise, really. Dalvin Cook, 14 carries, 79 yards. Darnell Mooney for Chicago, 12 receptions, 126 yards. A good game for him, but ultimately, Vikings are the better team. Washington 22, Giants 7. It was really a dominant game for Washington. This was a really good Washington game. Even though Heineke only threw 18 pass attempts, 9 for 18, 120 yards. Gibson had most of the workload, 21 carries, 146 yards, and a touchdown. So they really attacked the ground, which is smart, because although the Giants' defense isn't good, I think their run defense is substantially worse than their passing defense. Upset of the week. Jaguars 26, Colts 11. Don't get it twisted. Colts had other starters and they needed to win and they're in. It's just the Jaguars were better. Trevor Lawrence, 23 for 32, 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor, he didn't have the greatest game. 15 carries, 77 yards and no touchdowns. Marvin Jones Jr. for Jacksonville, 7 receptions, 88 yards and a touchdown. Jaguars lose, they get the number 1 pick. If they win, they need the Lions to win, and then they'll get the number 1 pick. And the Jaguars win, and they have the number 1 pick. Colts are out of the playoffs. They were knocked out by the 2-14 Jaguars, now 3-14. Next game, Steelers versus Ravens. Second upset of the week, in my opinion. Steelers, Big Ben, I was cheering for him. I want Big Ben's last dance kind of to at least make it in the playoffs. So I was happy that they will make it in the playoffs because of that crazy Raiders-Chargers game. Big Ben, 30 for 44, 244 yards and a touchdown. Latavius Murray for Baltimore really kept them in the game. He had 16 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown. Titans were up by 21 and they almost blew the lead. They went 20-25, and they clinched the AFC's top seed in this game. Davis Mills, 23 for 33, 301 yards, and 3 touchdowns. An amazing game. Kind of towards the second half. They didn't score any points in the first half, and then they scored other points in the third and fourth quarter. Titans, very inconsistent. One of the most inconsistent teams, as this game shows. Couldn't beat almost. Some people think is the worst team in the NFL. Kind of scares me a little bit going into playoffs. And they do have to bye, so they'll have time to talk it over, look at tape, and see what they did wrong. This was kind of unexpected. I was kind of expecting it to be like a 30, 40-point blowout, to be honest. But hey, you never know. An NFL team is an NFL team. Saints 30, Falcons 20. Not surprising to anyone. The Saints, even though they win, they do miss a wild card spot. Russell Gage, but really kept them in the game for Orlando. 9 receptions, 126 yards, and a touchdown. But Alvin Kamara, even though he didn't have a touchdown, he had a ton of volume. 30 carries, 146 yards, and not a touchdown, as I said earlier. Monster game. Didn't even need the touchdown. Amazing stat line. Bills 27, Jets 10. Jets were in it for some of the game, and I think they were only down by like 3 points. But then the Bills closed it up in that fourth quarter. They clinched the AFC East with this. Josh Allen, 24 for 45, 239 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not amazing, but not terrible. Devin Singletary, 19 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Good running game. Good. That's a good balance. As I said last episode, I remember I was saying the Bills can be very balanced normally. I know the pass game is always going to be there, but their run game, if it gets up, those are going to be a hard team to stop. Final and overtime. An overtime win for the 49ers, 27-24 over the Rams. They clinch a playoff berth by holding off the Rams. This was a really dominant game for the 49ers. They're one of my dark horses this playoffs. They can make a really deep push. They're really, don't be surprised if they surprise a couple people and make it to the divisional, even in the conference championship. Dolphins, Patriots. Dolphins 33, Patriots 24. Patriots do not get the first seed because they lose to the Dolphins. I don't know if they had a chance to get it, but they lose by 9, which is surprising. The Dolphins, if they just won the game earlier against the Titans, they would have been in the playoffs. They've gone like 7-8 their last like 8 games. So it's been a pretty good season. So yeah. And their running game really carried it. 25 carries, 117 yards, and a touchdown for their leading rusher. Seahawks 38, Cardinals 30, another upset. Seahawks it did not allow the Cardinals to clinch the NFC West. They were like the first seed in the NFC, and then now they didn't even win their division. So I don't know what's going to happen. Rashawn Penny, really turning it up at the second half of the season. 23 carries, 190 yards, and a touchdown for him. Tyler Lockett also had a monster game. 5 receptions, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Buccaneers 41, Panthers 17. Everyone was expecting this. Won't spend much time. Tom Brady 29 for 37, 326 yards, 3 touchdowns. Rob Gronkowski 7 receptions, 133 yards. Last game of the week, Raiders Chargers. Oh my goodness. Where do we start here? Do we start that Justin Herbert took 64 pass attempts? Or do we blame it on Brandon Staley for taking that timeout? Because it looks like they were going to really run out the clock. It's like the Chargers had it, and then he called a timeout, and the Raiders were like, okay, if you're going to do that, just kick a game-winning field goal. So I feel like Brandon Staley ruined our chances to see Justin Herbert in the playoffs. I'm really sad. I wanted to see him in the playoffs. Not much to say here. Raiders get a playoff spot. Chargers lose, and the Steelers jump in. I know this was a short episode, but really some of the games were like not meant to anything. Some of the games meant a lot. And I will see you in the next episode where I will be going over my NFL playoff bracket. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to watch episode 3. Bye.